Tart Turtle? Wood Butterendorf? Marv Shapopoulos Goo? Some games were kind of weird back in the 90s. Anyway, welcome back to Pixorama, where today I thought we would time travel back to the magical year of 1994 and check out an old Sega classic. A lesser-known Sega classic. A game that became a classic after a recent remake in 2023. Yes, that's right. Today I thought we would time travel and take a look at a little cartridge game for the Sega GameGear, a console that was hip and fresh and all that back in 1994. We happen to have one actually, and that thing chewed through batteries like you wouldn't believe. 6 AA batteries it took, and she went through them within a day. Within like an hour actually. Anyway, come with me and let's see what we can discover about Sonic Triple Trouble if we take it to pieces, pixel by pixel. That wondrous sound accompanied me through much of my childhood, and was often the prelude to some of the greatest video game memories I have. This is the opening to Sonic Triple Trouble on the GameGear, released in 1994, and right now you are witnessing it as I never did, because the screen on the GameGear was absolute garbaggio. It was bright-ish, but quite washed out, and the viewing angle was terrible. So to see it nowadays in this crisp clarity is something of a wonder. And also quite vindicating for the developers to have people finally see the game in its intended glory. Speaking of which, let's pause on this title screen and check a couple of things out here. The GameGear had a screen resolution of 160 by 144 pixels, and could access a palette of 4,096 colors, but on screen it could only display 32 at a time. So how to get around some of these limitations? Well, you could use a trick that I've used many times in my pixel art, which is the diffusion trick, and it's most noticeable on Sonic himself. You can see it being used on his scalp there, as well as his body and his mouth and his glove and everything. The technique is simple enough. You don't have enough colors available, so you pick a couple of similar shades and create this checkerboard pattern to make a gradient between them, basically. It's a cool way of, adding some detail and some depth without adding colors to your palette. Also, I must add that I love this little sprite of Knuckles laughing on the side here. I feel like they kind of probably should have added Robotnik or maybe Knack the Weasel here, seeing as it's called Triple Trouble. But, whatever. Let's move on. Things were kept pretty simple for the character selection screen, which you can see here. But it is interesting to note how Sega and Aspect decided to render these character sprites in large format, once again using this diffuse texture to give some depth to the image. But you won't see that anywhere else in the game. Let's choose Sonic, and here is one of the famous Sonic title cards. One thing I noticed and quite enjoyed about this game is that they tend to integrate a color from the level you're about to play into the title card for that level, which is kind of cool. So this is the very first level of Sonic Triple Trouble, the Great Turquoise. And as you can see, there's nothing revolutionary about this level design. It harkens back to some of the earlier Sonic games and the later Sonic games. It's this green hill design, which they just kind of repurpose in a lot of games. My suspicion is that Sega decided to do this to provide, comfort and familiarity to players. It's kind of their brand, this sort of green hill look. But it was, unfortunately, one of the things the game was heavily criticized for upon release. Critics and reviewers pounced on it for not really bringing anything new to the franchise. GamePro magazine said, "Oddly, the game just isn't as challenging as previous Sonic adventures," and went on to mention the lack of enemies in the levels, and also the slowdown that the console experienced, which was almost a deal-breaker for them. Electronic Gaming Monthly was even more critical, saying, "It doesn't really do anything new. I wasn't impressed. There is always that feeling of playing the same game over and over." And then added, as kind of a backhanded compliment, "Although the whole Sonic concept is getting strained, you can't help but admit to its quality." They did absolutely have some fair points. I noticed immediately the lack of enemies on a replay that I did recently, and this was a conscious decision on Sega's part to remove as much clutter from the levels as possible because the console actually just couldn't handle them, and it absolutely did slow down something fierce at times. This did not stop me from absolutely loving this game as a 10-year-old, and I think at this point we should step back to appreciate why that is.
Well, I think we all know what's coming now. A deluge of boring photos. Oh, yes, here they are.
Now, Janet, let me do my piece, please.
Oh, yes, well, get it over with quickly then.
Yep, fine, I'll cut it down. Yeah, the long story short is that, like many of you out there lucky enough to have owned a Mega Drive and to have grown up in the early 90s, the Sonic games played a large role in my existence and made quite an impression. There were drawings and stories and posters and all kinds of paraphernalia. So I was a little miffed, to say the least, when it was announced that Sonic Triple Trouble was not going to be released in Australia. Oh no, it wasn't that bad. But luckily, a chance trip to the US actually saw me finding the game at a tiny little video game store. After which, I was the happiest belle at the ball. There, was that short enough for you?
Yes, marvellous. Now, let's get back to the show before you bore us all to death.
You're the boss. Ooh, that's a lot of points. Now, although the game was criticized for numerous things, including, by the way, the size of the sprites and the screen itself, players saying that the playability was damaged because you couldn't see what was coming, the game itself is actually really quite fun to play. My concern doesn't really come from the slowdown issues or the kind of awkward mechanics in some of the levels that force you to stop all the time. It comes more from a feeling that the level designs themselves are kind of messy and sort of a bit rough around the edges, but we'll get into that. This is Sunset Park, the second zone in the game, and you can see that the general feel is kind of like Oil Ocean in Sonic 2. I feel they took quite a few leads from that level in this one. Although I have to say, seeing them in comparison right now, I like Oil Ocean better. It is less messy. And yes, I do know there are technical limitations to overcome. The point is, and this level is the best example I can find, the graphics at times are kind of jarring and there's a lot going on, which on a screen this size is not entirely helpful. I feel things should have been kept as simple and minimal as possible. Now let's check out a bonus level in Sonic Triple Trouble, which can be accessed via these crystal monitors once you have more than 50 rings. So here we are in what is, well, what I will term the bouncy labyrinth. And this is the most common form of bonus level in Triple Trouble. The aim is basically to make your way to the end before the timer runs out. And on the way you'll find these little timer extension boxes, which, as you might have guessed, grant you more time. These little zones, as in the case of most of the Sonic games, are quite frustrating. They start out, of course, at low difficulty and increase in difficulty as you progress through the game. Once you get through the level, you will have an encounter with Knack the Weasel. Originally called Fang the Sniper, so I'm glad they changed that one. Knack's ambition is clearly to become the next Knuckles, however, every time you encounter him, his traps backfire. And in this case, we can just head over and take the Emerald. Easy as. And I just wanted to pause here quickly to mention that while this game is kind of messy, and this screenshot is no exception, I do like the little throwbacks that they put into this game. In this case, you might notice that what we're witnessing here is a little bit of a Sky Sanctuary / Emerald Cavern vibe from Sonic 3 and Sonic 3 and Knuckles. Or maybe it's just me. In any case, here is a good example of what I'm talking about when I say that things are a little messy. Check out the tiling sprites on the ground here. I can't really determine what's going on there, whether they're supposed to be metal or stone, but either way, it all just kind of looks a bit of a mess. So I'm not loving that. Anyway, let's move on. We have a lovely little musical flourish here to cap off the bonus level. And now I want to skip ahead a little bit to the third act in Sunset Park Zone, because, for one reason only, I just want to familiarize you with the boss of this level, whose name is, well, we'll get to that in a second, won't we? For now, have a look at this high octane boss level here. Basically, the aim is to try and kill the baddies while not falling to your death in between the carriages, and to make your way to the head of the train.
Arr, but let's skip ahead, because we're all impatient.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I introduce you to Marv Shupopoulos Goo. Yes, for some reason this train has a name, and it's the most bizarre name I've ever heard. Not Steam Monster X or Trainanigan, but Marv Shupopoulos Goo.
And lest you think I'm lying,
here is a page from the official Sonic the Hedgehog Encyclopedia. So there. Blazin on ahead into Metajungala Act 1, and this is one of my favorite zones in the game, because it's fun for a start, but also I do love the level design. The color palette is quite pleasing. I love these rich greens they've used. This game was designed by Aspect Studio, which was formed in 1990, and worked on a whole bunch of Sega games, and a whole bunch of games for other consoles. And the same art team that worked on a lot of the other earlier handheld titles, Sonic Chaos for example, also worked on this. notably Masato Shimamura and Nobuhiko Honda, who both worked on the game design and art, while the sound design was done by Saori Kobayashi, who worked on many other titles including Sonic Drift, and actually did the sound effects for one of my favorite games ever, Nights into Dreams. Whew, if you know that one, you are probably as old as I am. It's bonus time again. But instead of going through the whole level, I thought I would just skip to the end because there's something I want to scrutinize under a fine-tooth comb. You see, at the end of this bonus level, we see Knack the Weasel, aka Fang the Sniper, in a very curious-looking machine. It looks a bit like a vacuum cleaner. But I'll have you know the name of this device is the Marvelous Queen. Anyway, I thought at this juncture we could stop to have a look at things in a little more detail. In particular, I wanted to talk about the character sprites in this game, because it was one of the things that this game was actually lauded for. I can absolutely understand why people praised these sprites at the time. On a handheld device with not much memory and not many colors to choose from, these sprites were actually, well, they're adorable. I absolutely love the color palette used, and I'm always impressed with these older games at how efficient the design teams were, with the limited dimensions given to them to express what they needed to. Most of these sprites are around 25 by 30 pixels, maybe 35 by 40, they sort of hover around that zone. So there's not much room to play really, but these sprites are wonderfully detailed, and they do try to get the most across in the fewest available frames. In some cases these animations are only 2 frames long. Sonic and the main characters of course get a few more frames, most of their run cycles are around 6 frames. Skipping to the next zone, we find ourselves in a Robotnik Winter. And I find this zone particularly pretty. I love the color palette used. It's not too cluttered like some of the other zones, and although initially I thought that blue in the tiling would conflict with Sonic himself, actually it doesn't. He stands out quite well against it, as he does against the sky, which is that kind of lovely shade of pink. Now, if this level seems familiar to you, it's probably because you've played Sonic 3 and you've experienced the wonder that is Ice Cap Zone. I feel like this level took a lot of leads from that, and as the games came out at a similar time frame, I have no doubt that Sega was onto that and felt that Ice Cap Zone was pretty cool and wanted to carry that over to the GameGear. In any case, I think that's sufficient to tickle your taste buds and give you a sense of the flavor of this level. So let's move on to the next one. Oh, and what Sonic game would be complete without a water level? The bane of any Sonic lover's existence. I find this level visually quite interesting. It's obvious that there were some bold choices taken, and while I respect that, I can't help but feel that this is the visual equivalent of eating toxic plastic. It doesn't taste good, and I will remember it forever, for all the wrong reasons. So as usual, we have the overland and the underwater sections of this level, which means of course that you can drown. It's stressful and unpleasant, and I don't like it. But it is part of this game, and so I will like it. Oh god, but the timer started. Let's move on. The final zone, the 6th zone in this game, is Atomic Destroyer. And honestly, there's not much I can say about it. Once again, it does harken back to the other games, Sonic 3 in particular. You might find it looks quite similar to Death Egg Zone, for example, or Metallic Madness Zone from Sonic CD. Again, a Sonic game would not be a Sonic game without Sonic getting lost in some labyrinthine mechanical monstrosity. Visually, I feel this level successful in getting a sense of foreboding across, and then of course, at the end, you have the obligatory showdown with Knack the Weasel, which turns into a disaster for him, ha ha ha. Now the only thing left to do in this game is to face the big bad, Robotnik in all his robot-y glory. I'll skip through this final battle, and just be warned there are spoilers ahead, if you don't want to see the end of this game. But basically there are 3 rounds to this final battle. The first where he's in his little pogo robot machine, the second where he's flying above you raining down fire, and the third where you're trapped in an electric lightning bolt machine trying to catch Robotnik as he zips from side to side. I will pause here briefly just to mention that I love the various Robotnik sprites that turn up in this game. I love the detailing and the glass effect and the lighting effects they managed to pull off. Not to mention his smug little grin. It's kind of cute somehow. The final boss fight was kind of challenging, if only because of the viewing angle problem and the small screen size. But as usual, Sonic Triple Trouble provides nothing revolutionary for this final encounter. After which, Robotnik tries to make one of his trademark getaways, but of course, we succeed in retrieving our stolen Chaos Emerald, and then... shock horror! There's a captive to be freed, and it's Knuckles. I do find this quite cute. Sonic stretches out his hand for a little shake, and Knuckles reciprocates. You see, peace is so much more beneficial than war. and off the two go out of the atomic destroyer, after which Sonic joins Tails for a joyride on the Tornado into the sunset. The credits sequence is not very spectacular, it gradually fades into sunset, so I will skip it. And with that, we reach the end of this little pixel review of Sonic Triple Trouble. Even to this day, I can't help but be impressed when I see what people were capable of when faced with the restrictions of these tiny little consoles, with their meager chipsets and limited color palettes and so on. The whole era of retro games and pixel art is, of course, my favorite, and I still love revisiting these games, not just for the nostalgia, but also to see how the pros did it back in the day. And at this point, I'd like to take a tiny opportunity to thank my older brother for lending me his GameGear back when I was 10 years old, because without that, I never would have played this little unknown gem. And that's it for this episode. It's kind of crazy to think how far games have come in the last 30 years, but Sonic Triple Trouble is a game that lies very close to my heart. Having said that, the game was completely remade last year in 2023 by a guy named Noah Copeland, who recreated this game from scratch as a fan love project, and it is spectacular. I will drop the link in the description below so you can go and check it out. But it really is a fantastic remake, and to be totally honest, it could be put on a cartridge and sent back in time and it would slot right in with those old classic Sonic games. The game is called Sonic Triple Trouble 16-bit, and I would actually love to do a pixel review of that in the future if you're interested. Let me know in the comments. Also smash the like button if you enjoyed this video, and subscribe to see many more like it. Until next time, I'm Jimzip. Thanks for watching.